y'all. How are we doing? It is a beautiful fall day here in New York City, so I am happy and excited to have this conversation. This is one I have been thinking about a lot. It's, I think, a little bit nuanced, so I hope y'all like it, but it is really and truly, I think, why business is feeling harder than ever. I think this happens no matter what's going on in the industry, but I think that's particularly in this season of business why business is really feeling harder, and I think it's something, well, I know it's something I have literally not heard anybody talk about. So I hope it's going to be a valuable conversation. As a complete side note, I've always got like my random stuff here. I have been down the rabbit hole of finding, your colors, like your season. Does anybody like this is what they did in the 80s where you're like a soft winter or a soft autumn or a soft fall or whatever that is. Um, does anybody know someone who does this where I don't have to go in person because I'm way too lazy and I don't care enough to go in person? But I kind of want to find out, especially since I used to have dark brown hair and I obviously now have blonde hair. And I have actually no idea. I think I've resisted it for so long because my whole closet is black and I'm pretty sure whatever my season is will tell me I am not supposed to wear black and I am not about to stop wearing black because black is a color in my opinion, and I'm a New Yorker. But I kind of want to know. Anyway, I was just thinking that when I came on here. I was like, oh, I look a little pale. I wonder if this blue and black is not my color. All right, I digress. Let's talk about the conversation at hand. This is very important. But seriously, if you know anybody who does that or anyone you recommend, because I know some people do that, if they do it virtually in a way that is they can actually like discern that, or if you have like a resource, or if you just know by watching my videos, comment, DM me. I actually am interested in that. Okay, let's dive into the topic that has nothing to do with seasons and colors, except for I like seasons and colors. Let's talk about what no one else is saying and why it's harder to get results right now. Okay, so what I think is important to level set, I think we've been talking about this for like the whole year since last year, is yes, business feels harder. I really don't like saying business is harder because I think we talked about this on another live stream. I think it is different than before. I think business just is hard. I mean, anytime we're going after a big goal, it is hard. I would say my business feels very easy. It doesn't feel hard to me at all, but I think that's also unfair to say because I have created a lot of ease over the years. I think at the start of my business, that probably felt like the hardest season, but I do think there's been a lot that has made business feel more challenging than ever, and that has made results take longer. I think it is just true. So just to level set, like it is just true that there is a trust recession. It is just true that AI continues to change the landscape dramatically for us. And something I think, like I just went down a rabbit hole researching this last night. I think it's just something we need to be paying attention to as business owners. It is just true that reach is down. There's been another algorithm change. It is just true that because the industry is saturated and because of the trust recession, most people are seeing a longer customer journey. It is not true that businesses are failing or that you can't get great results. I feel like I say this every week, and I'm just going to keep being an example of that. My business is up 23% this year. My already multi-six-figure business is up 23% this year. We've had multiple 40K cash months. Oh my gosh, flash is not a word. Cash months this year. Last month I think was 43K. With an all one-on-one model, so that's mostly profit. We have very low expenses. Many clients with different models and have had much bigger months than me and are continuing to get great results. I've had clients have their best launches ever, 50K months plus. So just to give that as an example, like I have many clients who are getting booked out for the first time. I have many clients who are hitting six figures for the first time. Many clients who are continuing to make $1 million or hitting 700K for the first time this year. So just because things are different or harder doesn't mean we can't get results. So it just feels like the caveat. And I think because of this and because things have shifted and because what worked in 2020 no longer works and because there are all of these shifts, we have had, as we should, so many conversations about reach, about the algorithm, I talk about these things, right? About what's working right now. And all of that is valid. I need a sip of water, y'all. I ate right before this, so hopefully I didn't have like food in my teeth. But all of that is valid, so I don't want to discount that. Just like I guess the other piece we need to throw into this is the world has always been on fire. The world, I think, feels politically, both on a global level and if you live in the U.S., particularly heightened. So there's so much going on. We have multiple wars happening. We have the threat of fascism in the U.S. Governments, I have many clients in the Middle East. I have many clients in Europe. Governments there are also, bringing up problematic things. Anyway, we are all holding more than usual. So it just feels important to name all of that. That is all true. And that is all having us focus on different things in our business. And while that is true, I think because of that and not because of that, there is something else we don't seem to be talking about that I think has always been an issue to make business feel harder. And I think because of all of those things is making business particularly harder for, if you are here in this group, for a lot of business owners. And so that's what I want to talk about today, because I think it's actually really important to understand. I think it is underneath so much of what is feeling challenging. And if you know me, you know I'm all about solving the right problem in business, identifying that, like closing the right gap. And I think if we don't understand this, it's really easy to solve for the wrong problem in your business and to get looped around whatever the present day fear mongering online is, instead of what actually needs to be solved. The reason my clients are continuing to get results is, yes, of course, they're brilliant at what they do and they're showing up, but a lot of it is because they're also really focused on spotting and solving the right problem in their business so they can continue to get those results, like just to name it and to make it that simple. So what I want to talk about today is what I'm seeing behind the scenes with like the most successful, high achieving business owners, like the conversations we're having, and a really interesting, I don't know what you want to call it, but like just a really interesting factor I see playing out. Where I think this stems from, because I think that's important for us to know so we can understand the internal and external shifts we actually need to make to continue to show up as CEOs, to serve our clients really well, to get really big results, to continue to market, to continue making 10K, 50K, 100K months without burning out. I'm going to share a little bit about how well-intentioned coaches and service providers, therapists are accidentally making business way harder and more work on themselves. And I think that is just also creating a level of pressure and stress. We'll talk about just what to do instead, what to focus on instead. And then the number one question I want you to be able to answer in any season so you can sustain and scale your results, basically in any economy. So hopefully that is going to be valuable for you. If you're here, say hello as we're going through this. Again, this is a bit of a nuanced topic, so if you have questions, if you want me to re-explain something, let me know. Let me pull up my notes though, because I feel like if anybody else do this, I like brain dump all these notes and then half the time I don't look at them, which is helpful because it organizes my thoughts. But this one I do want to make sure that I explain it in a way that makes sense. So just again, to preface, all of the things I just said are true. Let's just like name the elephant in the room. Business, even if it is not necessarily harder, and business has always been hard, it does feel harder. It does take more than it used to. Maybe that's a better way to say it. Let's not gaslight anyone. All of that is true. And the thing that I am really seeing underneath so much that I think is making results harder for so many people online is what I see as a collision between two different identities. And that's what we're going to walk through today. And so what I really see happening is there is a collision between the good girl conditioning identity and the high achiever identity, and how those two, which is, if you are in this group, if you are interested in my content, you are most likely a high achiever. I think men can also get good men conditioning, right? But I do have male clients, but I see this actually more in my female clients than in my male clients. So I do think this is a little bit more in terms of good girl conditioning. If you're listening to this, there's a good chance you identify with both. And what I am seeing is how those two collide, which I will explain, particularly in this season in the world and in our industry and in the online space, is what is actually making things so challenging. So let me explain what I mean here. Or I should say, like, this is what's making things heavier and harder. So just to like describe good girl conditioning. Good girl conditioning is patriarchy. Society has made many of us believe that we will be okay, we will be valuable, we will be safe if we are kind, if we are proper, if we don't make too much noise, if we are quiet, if we do things right, if we do things for other people, if we put everybody above us. That is, again, what is going to make us okay, safe, approved, right? So that's good girl conditioning, and that we get that good girl identity that I think so many of us can identify with, in terms of, I get my value, I get my safety by how good I am for everybody else, right? It's not really an internal thing, it's very much an external thing. And then we have high achievers, and I'm raising my hand on both of these, right? High achievers, which is, look, there's a lot of I always say every strength has its shadow and light side. So there's a lot of benefits and strengths to being a high achiever. But the shadow side of being a high achiever, which is most likely everybody here, is we want to be excellent. We want to be better than the better, than the best than the best, right? We have almost like an unhealthy competitive drive, addiction to competing to be better than whatever like could be the best of the best of the best, right? We also have such a desire for control and for over responsibility, right? Because I think over responsibility is a form of control, and this again is how we create value for ourselves and how we create safety. Okay, so together, when you take good girl conditioning and a high achiever wiring and you mash them together, suddenly it's not just I need to be good for other people. I need to do for other people. I need to be the best. I need to do things right. It's I need to be the best version of good, right, doing things for other people. And that is how I will be safe. That is how I will be successful. That is how I will get my value. Let me know if this is landing for you and if this makes sense, because this is and then I'll explain how I see this showing up for clients and what we want to do about it. I think what's really challenging about this is, well, twofold. One, forget what's going on in the industry, in the world, in the economy. If this is true, the goalpost never stops moving. And as high achievers, we are trying to chase a goalpost that is really all about over functioning and being overly good for other people, that is all about what other people need at our own expense. And when you add in the state of the world, when you add in the state of our industry that has a trust issue, right? When you add all of that in, this gets compounded, because now being good no longer means I just need to be, good enough, or I need to seem nice and seem appropriate. Now what I see happening with so many of my clients, and what I've really had to watch myself in as well, is we are trying to be good and overcompensate for our industry as a whole, or for what is happening in the world as a whole. And remember, high achievers like to take that responsibility and control. We are trying to outbest our best in terms of how good we can be, or how much we can show we're good, appropriate, nice girls, overcompensate, take over responsibility, not only for the industry, but for the world as a whole. And I want to be very mindful here as I talk through this. This does not mean that we don't have fucking responsibility, or that we don't take personal responsibility, or that we don't have a role in our industry, in the world, to show up for, to use our voice, to use our platform. If you know me, and if you follow any of my content, you know that I do not believe that at all. So that is not what I'm saying here. But what I see with good girl conditioning, high achieving, wiring, meshing together, is the pendulum is really, really swinging on this. And so what I see so many clients doing is they are overcompensating, they are taking over responsibility, and they are also diminishing and dimming what is great for themselves, while also moving the benchmark of what they expect their business to be able to do, and the responsibility and pressure they're putting on themselves. I'm just hoping this is all landing for you. Just want to see if there's any questions. Y'all are quiet, but if you have questions, let me know. I think, again, what this also means is, and what I'm seeing with clients is, if we know, I'm just going to use the industry as an example for a second, there's so much noise about the problematic coaches, the problematic programs, the problematic people. I mean, if we look at the state of world, right, we're in cancel culture. When we see that, and we have good girl conditioning, and we are a high achiever, what I'm seeing again is the pendulum swinging. And it's like, well, I will try to make sure I am not anything like that. That in capital THAT, right? I am not a problematic coach. I am not a problematic therapist. I am not a problematic service provider. I don't have a problematic program. My program gets perfect results. My program doesn't have any problems. My marketing is perfect. My marketing doesn't do things that are problematic. I'm not too shiny or bright or making anyone feel bad, right? It is just and that is good girl conditioning, but with the high achiever element, we are blowing all of that up and taking it to another level. And again, I just see that is where the overcompensation, the over responsibility, and the diminishing of owning our work, taking up space, is really starting to take place. And that, especially right now, is not going to help anyone in business, and is going to make results so much harder when there's a trust recession, it is loud and noisy online, reach is down, And so, it matters even more that you're having conversations that are appropriate for your marketing and letting people know how you can serve and support them. When all of these things are happening, this creates an even bigger problem and makes business even harder because you're basically fighting against yourself because you're not leaning into the very things that are required to get results in business. And then we make reach the problem. We make the trust recession the problem. We make, oh my God, nobody's buying right now the problem. We make AI the problem when that's not actually always the problem. Sometimes the problem is we're not showing up to market effectively, or we're not showing up in our containers. We're over delivering our containers and burning ourselves out. And that's what's actually the problem. But we're not solving for that. We're trying to solve for, in a really unhelpful way with good girl conditioning overachieving or high achieving, we're trying to solve the wrong issue in our businesses. Okay, let me explain through this a little bit more. So I'm going to share how this, I'm going to just give you some examples of how this shows up for clients first, because I think that might be helpful just to anchor into, so you can be like, oh, I didn't even realize, like this isn't to call anybody out. Like, again, this is, I have clients who are very successful, very brilliant. This is something, we all, this pattern is, I think it's just helpful to see, this pattern is not just like mindset. It is also biology. It is also, the word conditioning means we have been conditioned, programmed this way by society, by the patriarchy, by well-meaning parents, by well-meaning society members, right? It is not our natural state, but we have been conditioned that way. And high achievement, again, that's more a wiring. So I think it's just really important to see, this isn't like, literally is not calling anyone out, but it is really important for us to see, oh, if I have been conditioned and programmed this way, I'm not going to notice this. This is going to seem normal because this is how I always function in every aspect of my life and in my business. And so if I can't have someone help me see this, mirror this to me, reflect this to me, I'm going to continue to function this way. Since we're talking about AI is a tool that is just going to give me what I put into it, right? Any computer thing, right? How I program it. If I program my AI a certain way, that is what it will give me back. So it's the same thing. You and I are the best AI ever. We're just not artificial, but we have the best computers ever. But if we are programmed a certain way, unless we have somebody else or have someone say, hey, this programming isn't really working for you, and we don't reprogram that, we're not even going to notice. That is just going to be our default, and that is how we will function in the world. And then especially, and I will give you those examples, but I think it's just important to say, like, this is literally not calling anyone out. I think we just want to create awareness around this because, again, this is what we've learned. And especially if you have any sort of trauma, if you come from certain backgrounds, and I think in a time, if you're feeling particularly unsafe because whether that is you're hearing all this noise and the fear mongering, or you're stressed financially, or maybe you're doing great financially, but that actually creates a stress because you've been taught that it's not safe and okay to have success, that the bottom could fall out, or that people will hate you, right? I think there's so many reasons we can feel unsafe even when things are going very well. So if you have any of those reasons, right, then of course we have to remember what we're going to do is reach for our coping mechanisms that our programming have given us. And what programming from good girl conditioning and as a high achiever tells us is the way we regulate, the way we feel safe, is by fixing, is by doing, is by achieving. And we're going to do that in the ways that are, in air quotes, good and acceptable, and kind of have us take on all the responsibility, which is really tough because when we're trying to control everything and we're also trying to feel safe, it's like those worlds don't really live together in the same, they don't really work together in the same place. It's really tough to feel safe when you're constantly gripping, overdoing, when you're saying there is no amount of doing, achieving that will ever be enough to feel safe. There is no, like, unless I can control everything, I am not safe. Unless I can be seen a perfect way, I am not safe, right? Those don't really coexist. And so that's why we create such a loop here, because we have to create that internal safety first and reprogram some of these things so that we can spot and solve the right problem in our business. I often tell my clients, you can't out strategize your pattern, your conditioning, your programming, your nervous system, your mindset. Like, we just can't out strategize that. We can't outwork that. my high achievers. I know we hate that. Like, we can't outfix, we can't outwork, we can't outachieve the things we need to unwind. Okay, but let me give you some examples here. So I think a couple of ways I've seen this show up for clients, just so you can have some things to anchor into. And this, you can see how this shows up in practical strategy. One of my clients and I were actually this is shown up for multiple clients if I think about this. We were taking a look at their conversion events for launches, and I can think of 4 or 5 clients who come to mind who have had launches recently or conversion events recently, where when we took a look at, because sometimes what I'll do is we'll get on a call, we'll go through the webinar slide by slide, we'll review those together, I'll review the material. One of the things I noticed is how many of my clients were over teaching and over giving, and not because they're like, oh, this just feels so good to teach, or this feels so great to do. When we unpacked it and what was feeling so challenging about streamlining their marketing was, I literally heard this from multiple clients, is, oh, but I know how many people are mad at coaches because everybody, or therapists, or some of these are not coaches, they have other service providing businesses, but everybody thinks when you sign up for a webinar, it's just going to be fluff and it's not going to teach you anything. Or everybody talks about how shitty everybody's program is, and like how they signed up for so-and-so's program and there was like nothing inside of it, and like it didn't have any value. And so I just want to make sure I can prove and show to people in here. And basically what they were saying is like, I just want to show people how good I am, and I'm going to overachieve at that so that, you know, I can not be a part of the problem. And what I said to one of my clients is, we can't solve a problem in somebody else's business in our industry. When we have a problematic program or a problematic coach, we can't solve that problematic coach or program by creating a problem in your business, right? That literally doesn't make sense. And yet this is what our brain does. We think, if I can overcompensate to basically create a problem in my business, then that will somehow fix everything else. If I can just be good enough, I will take care of all of the problems that are going on in the industry at a whole. I'll give you another example. I'll give you a personal example for me outside of business as well. But so I have a couple of other clients who coming to me, they're like, I don't understand. I feel like I have no capacity in my business. I don't understand how I'm going to be able to take on more clients. My revenue is going to be capped. Feel like I'm burning out. I don't understand what's going on. And giving, like, this is not necessarily how they described it. And when we unpacked what was really going on, yeah, this was actually true, but the reason for this wasn't that they didn't have more capacity. It wasn't that they couldn't, I always say scaling is solving for a capacity issue, right? So we did have to look at the capacity, but it wasn't really capacity. Yes, their capacity was being drowned, but what was really happening is a couple of things. A couple clients were over delivering and overcompensating because they didn't want to be that person, right? And so they were taking on so much more than was in their contract and going so far outside the scope of their work. I have one client in particular, they're in a completely different industry than the coaching industry. So I think it's just helpful to see, like, this isn't just the coaching industry. This is a conversation we've been having a lot. And so much of her capacity and so much of what's feeling like she's going to near burnout is really how much pressure she puts on herself from good girl conditioning and from high achieving, and where they intersect, to overly take responsibility and overly take on what is hers, and to overcompensate and to try to be really good and to over deliver, but not in a healthy way. I over deliver for clients all the time, but it is in a way where, like, it feels really good and clean, and like I want to, and I know I don't have to, and I have the capacity to, as opposed to I have to do this to be safe, to be okay, to be deemed a good coach, to be deemed worthy, to get paid, whatever that is. Right, and so, like, that's one way I'm seeing this. Another way I'm seeing this show up is with clients in the same landscape, like with the same underpinnings, but in their content, in terms of how long content is taking for them to create. And they're saying it's because, you know, I want to make sure, like, things have changed online, whatever, so it feels harder. Like, I think there's an element of that. Like, some things is, like, I am doing less better. I definitely am putting more thought and intention into content, into marketing, like into one piece than maybe I used to. I think in the past we could just put out more, but it's becoming a thing where it's like things are taking so long and getting so overthought. And the reason for it is not even so much that they're trying to, like, learn a new muscle in marketing or learn a new skill because the algorithm changed, or I don't know, like, well, we just were talking about webinars. It's not like they're like, oh, I'm learning a new way to teach in webinars, and so it's taking me away like it's taking me longer than it would have in the past to rework these slides or to really think about this and be intentional. That's great. I'm not mad at that. We're not talking about, I mean, I'm not mad at anything, but that's not what I'm talking about here. It's more, I'm so worried about what people will think. I'm so worried about this coming across the right way. I am having a really hard time because things are going really well in my business and I have a lot to offer, but I don't want to make people feel bad. I feel like because the world is on fire, I shouldn't be talking about this in my content. And so I am making things so twisted in my brain and trying to figure out a way to both take up space, but also take up no space and not offend anybody or not rub anyone the wrong way, and also not to be one of the problems in the industry, and also not do all of these other things. I'm trying so hard to be good while also trying so hard to high achieve and have the most perfect post ever that is going to beat out what's going with the algorithm, that I am either frozen or I am reworking something over and over and over and over and over again. I don't know if anybody watches The Great British Bake Off, but you know, they like overwork their dough and then it sucks and they have really bad pie crust. I think it's pie crust. Like that's what's happening. That's one way I see this playing out with content. I see when a couple of my clients are going to be like, you're talking about me. I promise y'all, this is not just you. This is even me. This is something, this one here is something I've had to catch myself in. What I've seen for quite a few people is just stop talking about their business and results altogether. And I think this one is, I don't think it's conscious at all. I know for myself, I realized this a couple of weeks ago. I'm like, oh, I need to lean into this a little bit more. And I had to check. And I'm like, I do think part of this is just, to be quite honest, I have been so enraged at the state of our country that I have just, it's almost like my brain can't think. I don't think that's the good girl conditioning and the high achieving part. I think there's an element of that, but I think just to also name that, I think so many of us are so enraged. It's almost like been hard for me to think about talking about anything else. And so I either rage about politics, or like that is almost like the lens in which I'm seeing business content through. And if I'm really, 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 really honest, I also know I have good girl conditioning. I've worked really hard to decondition, and I am a high achiever through and through. And so what I'm talking about here is me as well. And I know how much my good girl conditioning combined with my specific traumas and how I have learned to cope with those as that intersects with my high achievement tendencies is how much I do not want to ever be the problem, make other people feel bad. I don't want to take up too much space. I don't want to shine too bright, especially if it could potentially make anybody feel not good in any way. And so when I know a lot of people are struggling in business because all of the things we talk about at the beginning of the online space, this conversation, and when people are reaching out to me and hire me for that reason, and I'm seeing behind the scenes, and I just know that's true. And the reality is my business is doing better than it ever has. And we are up 23% this year, and so many of my clients are thriving, and I am the most, political rage aside, I am the most regulated and content I've ever been, and I have a happy marriage and a happy life, and I just went on this beautiful trip, right? All of these wonderful good things. For me, that is one of my biggest edges, and it's almost like a trigger for me that will have me upper limit, because the last thing I want to do is go and be like, oh guys, like look at how great everything is, and own that, especially when I don't want to be that person, right? Or I don't want to create a problem or make anyone feel bad, or it feels tone deaf. And if we look at that, what is that really? I mean, that is me dimming my light. That is me. That is good girl conditioning. That is me high achieving a good girl conditioning of like, almost like, how can I be the best at minimizing myself and like fall on the sword the most, and still create those results. But it's also such a trauma response. It is me saying, I am only safe and okay if I get the approval of others, and if I don't make other people feel bad, and if I downplay what is good in my life and I don't enjoy that and I find a way to suffer, if I can do that, then I am good, then I am okay, then I am likable, right? It's all part of the same pattern. That makes it really, like, that's something I have to check myself on regularly, and I see that happening with so many of my clients, particularly right now, because of the state of the world, because of the state of the industry, when the truth is our job as marketers is to speak to what is possible for people, the results we can help people get. I mean, what from a place of integrity and what is true, but I don't really benefit anyone if I'm like, business is really hard right now and I don't know how to help you get results and no one's getting results, right? Like, I can level set, business is feeling harder for people, and the reality is you can still get results, and I know how to help you do that, and I'm doing that myself, and I'm walking my talk, and my clients are as well, right? It doesn't really benefit anybody either. Like, it's, if you're in really great shape and you help people get in really great shape and to get really healthy, it does not benefit anyone if you get out of shape just because some of your clients are struggling with getting in shape or working out just so that they can feel better. It does not benefit anybody, right? You just create a new problem for yourself. It does not benefit anyone if you start pretending that you aren't in great shape and you don't know how to be healthy and you aren't doing that for yourself. You benefit people by saying, hey, I'm walking my talk. Yes, maybe sometimes this is challenging for me too, but I am actually walking my talk. I am able to do this. This creates the results you want, and I can show you how to do that as well. But again, this is where we see that good girl conditioning, the high achieving, really come into play together. And I think particularly because of the state of the industry, how much of us don't want to be part of the problem or like that person, or we don't want to seem braggy, or we don't want to seem tone deaf. I think it is just getting really blown up right now. And so I think those are just, I don't have to give you too many examples there, but I think this is just really helpful to see so you can start to identify, oh, is it the trust recession? Is it AI? Is it really reach? Is it the state of the world? Or is it my conditioning and the way I'm wiring and my response to that that's actually making business harder, and that's actually making it harder for me to get results? I'm not saying all of that is not true and that does not play into things, but there will always be different circumstances we are responding to. It is also the way in which we absorb that and the way in which our conditioning has us show up as a response to that that actually creates an issue and problem in our business. And this is, I mean, this is so important. I want to share a couple of other things, and I will close on this more though, is it becomes so important because again, otherwise we start solving the wrong problem in our business. And if we think the problem is AI, for example, something we can't really control, when the real issue is I need to unwind some of my good girl conditioning and notice how as a high achiever I show up and try to control things, put pressure on myself. If we're instead trying to solve the problem of AI, we can see how of course business is going to feel harder than ever, and of course it's going to be harder to get results. Let me just see if there are any. Okay, you don't have any questions, but if you do, throw them at me. Just need a quick sip of water. Had notes here on good girl conditioning, high achiever patterns. I feel like we talked about this already though. I made the notes, but I feel like this is why I don't always look at my notes, because I say all the things already, but I feel like maybe this is just worth putting a button on, and then I want to talk about what we do about this. Again, so just so we can understand why this is happening, good girl conditioning tells you your safety, your value comes from being good. And it is from pleasing, from smoothing things over, from never being too much, from really being compliant for other people. And it is a survival strategy, essentially. And I think it's important to see it is a survival strategy, not a leadership or business strategy. It's not even a relationship strategy. It is a survival strategy, and our brains are wired for survival, not success. But I think that's important to see, because then when we are in times where we feel unsafe or stressed, right, we're going to go to survival. It's really tough to sustain and scale a business. You can, but it is really tough to do that when we're in survival mode. But that's one of the reasons, right? We go to this conditioning instead of to the things that actually move us forward to create results. Or when things feel unpredictable, right? It's just really tough for us. Like, that's when we're going to go into those habits of trying to fix things, trying to take on more than is our responsibility, trying to perfect things. And then as high achievers, again, what I want us to keep understanding is how these two things intersect together and how they affect us. As high achievers, we take that good girl conditioning, and it's like we just take it more clicks. Like, as high achievers, what we tend to do, and again, I really identify with this, so I'm not calling anyone out. I have to check myself, because what I have a tendency to do is, if something is serving, like, forget good girl conditioning, if anything is serving, or if I could do something in my business, I have a tendency just to take it 3 notches, like 3 clicks too far, because I don't just want to be good or successful. Like, I want to, same about other people, right? I'm in like competition with myself. I want to be better than my best. I want to be the most good. I want to be the one who never drops the ball. I want to be the one who can hold, if I can hold all of this, why wouldn't I hold even more? If, if a reel got 500,000 views, why can't I get 700,000 views, right? It's just like, I always wanted to take it to that next notch. And that will probably always be my wiring, but I can just be aware of it so that I'm working with it instead of against myself or weaponizing that against myself. But I think we just, again, I know I'm repeating myself here, but I just really want to land the plane on this. I think we just want to see how the more we try to overwork, over deliver, over own, over responsibility, overreach, the more we take healthy responsibility, healthy drive, healthy work ethic, and we turn it into pressure, self-sabotage, self-sacrifice, right? And things that will lead us to burnout or just wanting to burn our business down because we end up fucking hating it. So I think, last story here, and then I will share just, then I want to share how to shift this and how I think about this. I think I shared this on Instagram last week, but one of the things this really makes me think of is, many of you know this story from my past. So I'm sure this relationship was a response to my trauma, but my ex, I want to say it was like 15, it might have been 20 years ago. I dated someone for a while. I was in a long-term relationship with someone who ended up having quite a lot of mental health issues and became an addict. He wasn't when we started dating, but towards the end of our relationship, and without getting into too much, like just an addict, and it was very unhealthy. Like he spent $10,000 of my money on a bender. It was just like, it was all sorts of things. I remember when that happened, and I think it's just helpful, like all of this to see is like, again, there's so much at play here. But I remember in terms of the good girl conditioning, the high achieving like pattern and how that like interplayed, that was such a good example for me because I would say for about a year, we stayed together until I put him into rehab and broke up with him, for obvious reasons. But what I could see is my behavior, right? My enabling behavior for that year in the relationship and my thought process behind that, based on good girl conditioning, based on my high achieving pattern and wiring, was really like, if I can just be good enough in this relationship, if I can just take on more responsibility, if I can just overcompensate for all of the things that he's doing here, if I can just be more in every single way, right? If I can basically just be more than good, like good enough, and good, like a good girl, but also high achiever in me is like, if I can just click that even more notches forward, and if I can just overcompensate for where he's falling down in the relationship, if I can just be everyone in the relationship, if I can be everything for us financially, if I can be everything for us in our personal relationship, right? If I can overcompensate, if I can overfunction, if I can overdo, and do that all as a good girl, right? Like while keeping a smile and keeping the peace and being really pleasant and not ruffling any feathers and not taking up too much space. If I can do all of that, then everything will be fine. And obviously, we can see from the outside looking in or hearing a story like that, like no amount of fixing or being good that is enabling, that is an unhealthy dynamic. No amount of that is going to be a solution in, like, that's just an extreme situation, right? Like, and I think that's such a great example of, again, that's very extreme, but I think it just helps us to see what is happening for so many of us in our businesses. And then it's just so easy to make it about something. Like, we're like, I don't understand that relationship, right? It's like, I don't understand why this feels so hard. And it's like, well, it feels so hard because you're literally solving the wrong problem. You have made yourself the problem, and you are trying to fix yourself and overcompensate and do all of these things. You are now part of the problem. You've created a new problem, but like, we're literally focused on the wrong thing there. So same, this is just what happens in our businesses. One of my clients, when we were taking a look at something, it clicked for her. The example she gave, she was like, oh, right. If we were just talking about the overcompensating for clients and over delivery in an unhealthy way. And she's like, right, if I do my kids' chores for them all of the time, yes, the chores get done, but I'm annoyed, I'm frustrated, I'm resentful, I'm overworking, I'm like, everything is on my plate. Like, if I take on everything for the family, and so I've created that new problem. And my kids also, it doesn't actually serve or support my kids, because I think that's the mind fuck with all of this. We think all of this will help get the result, and keep us safe and create more success. But at the end of the day, it doesn't serve our clients, it doesn't serve our audience, it doesn't serve our business. In that case, it doesn't serve our kids because they don't actually learn how to do the chores. They don't actually learn how to take some personal responsibility, right? We just create and enable, like we just perpetuate that dynamic. Let me see. Okay, no questions. Okay, so I think what we want to think about now is, okay, we've talked about how this impacts results, I think. But I think it's just important to see, we think when we do this, when we are controlling in this way and we're taking the notches, I really do think all of us think this will actually not only help me not be a part of the problem, but I think on a subconscious level, we think this will get us results. And I think it is so important to see this is the very thing that will break results. Overcompensating, over delivery, over responsibility, overly trying to be good, right? All of these things are literally the things that will diminish your results. It will affect how you show up in marketing. It will affect how you show up in sales. It will affect your capacity. It will make you more likely to burn out. But it will also, when we're talking about marketing, sales, and delivery, right? These are the important things as business owners, your capacity. It is going to affect all of that in a way that doesn't serve your results. So I think a couple things we can play with here. I think it's just important to remember, I keep saying this in different ways, we don't fix a problem by becoming the problem or creating a new problem for ourselves. Integrity in business is not suddenly becoming a martyr. I know this is so hard, especially if we have an ego girl condition. It is so hard for our brains to wrap around that, but we don't fix a broken industry. We don't fix a broken world by creating a new problem for ourselves, right? I can't fix the coaching industry by trying to be such a good girl and essentially being not a great coach by creating codependent relationships with my clients, right? Like, that doesn't actually solve the problem. I don't fix the economy by fucking my business up and not continuing to make revenue in my business, where I now can't pay my team and I can't pay myself, right? And like that literally does not fix it is the wrong problem to solve. And so I know this is so obvious for us all, and yet I think on a subconscious level, because of what we're talking about here, it seems like that is the way that we will be good and that we will be safe and that we will solve things. I think it's also important to remember that in business, your business, we don't get results in business by trying to stay as safe and small as possible. I'm not saying you can't be safe. Some of the work is about creating internal safety, but some of business is actually about putting, and all success, right? All business and success asks us to, we don't have to be loud and flashy, but it does ask us to step outside our comfort zone and to play a bigger game and to show up bigger. It just does. And business is just inherently something we can't control. And I mean, I think there's a lot of control and steadiness we can create, but it does come with some inherent risk. And it does not have to be crazy. I mean, I think in some ways not having a business is more risky. Like, that's a whole different conversation. But I do think we have to create a tolerance around some of the risk that comes with playing a bigger game, betting on ourselves, taking up more space, making bigger investments. I know in my business, I've had to do so many create safety around taking risky things, right? Investing in coaching, investing in ads, investing in team, in things before I had the revenue and money, so that I could create success. And some of those things were not a success right away, right? I have one of the best coaches, I think, in the industry. I did not make back my investment in the first 6 months because it took some time. With ads, I just did the math. My ads are getting a 20 to 42x, maybe even more with renewals, return on investment. I have a one-on-one model, so I think it's very different. So that feels like a very skewed numbers. But the point is, I get we don't spend a lot on ads. I'm talking a couple $100s a month. So again, I'm not like the best example here, but just to give the example of what I'm trying to say here, that's a great result and success. To do that, I had to put myself in what felt like an unsafe, risky, like I had to be okay investing and learning how to run ads, investing quite a bit of money at the start to optimize my ads, to make mistakes, to have money that got spent that did not get me a great result. Right? That is how we create success. If we use the gym as an example, I've had some cool things I've been able to do at the gym and some gains in terms of my strength. That is only possible because I first showed up and kind of sucked. And I did some things that were hard and I had to get to failure. Literally, how you get more muscle at the gym is you have to go to the point of failure. And most of us at the gym don't ever get stronger because we don't even get close to failure because we are so scared of that, or taking up the space with that, what that looks like. So the point being is we can't create more success this way, and yet good girl conditioning and tells us you are safe if you shrink. You are safe if you are good. Right. And so this is why this is so important for us to think about in business. I'm trying not to go down a rabbit hole here. I just feel very, 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 very strongly about this. The way we create success in business, the way we create big results in business is by creating internal safety. I have got myself, and I know I am safe no matter what, right? Internal safety, internal nervous system regulation. This does not mean this stuff ever goes away. I have fears all the time. My brain, I can catch stuff and I would say today, my brain is pretty calm, and I still have shit that gets kicked up all the time but we have to create internal safety with our emotions, with our nervous system, with our finances, with our business, with taking up space, all of these things, so that we can show up in a way that we know we've got ourselves to not only take up more space and to own things in our work, but to also do some of in air quotes, riskier bets on our business to get results. Because without that, what I would argue is it is so much riskier not to. It is far riskier in your business to take this in air quotes safe bet, to sit on the sidelines, to not take up more space, to not make the investment. That is literally the risk. I'm not saying this, I'm fully booked. I'm not trying to get a client here. This is not a you need to invest in yourself conversation. It is just real talk when I look at my business, when I look at my stock portfolio. You literally cannot get results with the riskiest thing to do is to sit and try to do the safe thing, which is why, again, this is so important, because the good girl conditioning high achiever combo is all about how do I stay as safe as possible in a way that is a false sense of safety, as opposed to creating true internal safety within ourselves, that we've got ourselves and we can handle things so that we can show up to take some of those, in air quotes, riskier steps, bets, investments that actually yield results. Because when you have that internal safety, that real safety, right? Not because good girl conditioning, remember, that is all about creating safety from the outside in. It is safety based on how other people perceive you and judge you. High achievement really as well, as opposed to that internal safety, which is kind of doesn't matter if people think I'm good. It kind of doesn't matter if people think I've achieved enough or if I've done enough. I know I am safe because I've got me. I trust myself to handle this. I trust myself to figure this out, right? I trust myself to self-regulate. I feel internally safe. I know that I am okay and can navigate this no matter what. When we have that internal safety as opposed to that external safety, I really hope this makes sense, right? That is when we can then take the actions in our business that get us the big results. That's when we can post boldly. That's when we can take up more space. That's when we can do the risky thing of investing to learn something or to run ads or to have that new marketing campaign or new conversion event we don't know is going to land with people. Whatever, fill in the blank there, right? And that's where big results come from. And that is why so many people are struggling right now, because it is their need for that external safety, which is the thing we can't control, that we are ironically trying to control as high achievers through the good girl conditioning, that is getting heightened by all of the external things that are going on in our world, as opposed to us really focusing on building that internal safety so we can spot and solve the right things in our business and to run after them, knowing we can do the riskier things and we can handle that. Hopefully that is landing, because I feel like that right there. Hey Claire, nice to see you. I just saw your message. I was just on a long ass rant. I feel like, again, this is quite a nuanced concept, but I feel like if I was what is the secret to success? It is this. What is the secret to business? It is this. Obviously there are other factors at play. Yes, we need to have a good offer and know how to message and know how to market, know how to sell. But this is the thing underneath it all. Okay. Let me just close with a couple other thoughts, just in terms of how to think about this. So did I have notes here? Yeah, okay, so we talked about creating the internal safety. I think, again, when you feel safe, when you know how to create internal safety too, you stop trying to prove things to feel safe, and you stop trying to get a better and better result to feel good enough and to feel safe, which actually puts you in a neutral enough place to ironically go out and get bigger results. And so the irony to me in this is when we create that internal safety, we actually get the very thing we are trying to get from good girl conditioning and from our high achieving tendencies. It's just really hard to get them the other way, or it's hard to get them in a way that actually feels sustainable. And I think for my high achievers, what I would just say, like, again, there's a shadow and a light. There's a lot of strengths and positives to being a high achiever. I think good girl conditioning is just fucked, and like fucked the patriarchy in my opinion. So like there's that. But as high achievers, I am so grateful I'm a high achiever. Like there's a lot of great things about that. It's just understanding when we're in our healthy expression or that unhealthy expression. When are we using this as a strength? And when are we weaponizing this against ourselves? And I think some of the work for us is really developing our discernment around where we are putting our attention, around where we are taking on responsibility, around where we are trying to improve something, and just having discernment of, is this coming from the right place of this is what my business needs, this is what I need, this is what really makes sense strategically, this is what feels good, or like literally like just what does my business need, this is what my business need, or is this coming from a place of I don't feel secure, I don't feel safe, I don't feel good enough, and so I am trying to fill a hole or create internal safety based on external things by just doing more, taking on more, overcompensating, achieving more. Right? I think that's really the discernment that is our lifelong work, and just seeing like, what is mine? What is someone else's? I talk a lot with my clients about responsibility. Personal responsibility is so important. I'm going to not go off on a tangent, but our online space has such an issue, not anybody here, because you probably take overly personal responsibility, but our online space as a whole has, I think, a challenge with taking responsibility and with entitlement. But that is a conversation for another live stream. Most of us, if you are suffering from the good girl conditioning and high achievement intersection, we take over responsibility. I know some of my work always in therapy is my habit is to overly take on responsibility, right? And so I talk with clients about this all the time, really getting clear on what is your responsibility in your business? What is yours to own? What is yours and what is theirs? Where is the responsibility you need to give back to somebody else? Where is the responsibility you need to give back to something else in the industry, right? What is yours and what is not yours at all? And so I think it is really helpful to get clear. I have clients often come up with a chart with like, what is my job responsibility? What is my clients? What is my audiences? What is the industry? Like, there's usually a certain amount that is in our responsibility. Yes, you need to show up for that 100%. Everything else, we want to start to know is like that is where the overcompensation, over delivery, over functioning starts to come into play. That's where we try to show up like good girls in our good conditioning, right? Where it's like, I'm just going to be so good by overdoing it in all of these ways. And so, and instead of like, what do we do instead? I think this is, we talked about addicts earlier. I think this is a part of recovery is a lot of people who go through recovery, right? They might stop cold turkey, but one of the things they need to do is what are they going to replace that with? So if we're going to stop this behavior, what do we replace this with? I think the first thing we want to do, I've said this like 15 times in this live stream, is, I mean, yes, just what I said, like discernment around the responsibility piece. But I think the other thing here is discernment around what is actually the right problem in your business to solve. What is actually the right gap to close? And if there are multiple problems or gaps, which there can be, what is the first problem or the first gap to close? Because it kind of doesn't matter if we have a bunch of gaps. The way people always teach this is like a funnel, right? If you have a bunch of leaks in your funnel, it doesn't matter if you plug the bottom leak or if you have a hose, right? And there's a bunch of leaks in the hose. It doesn't matter if you fix all the leaks on the back of the hose, the front of the hose, like as opposed to the back of the hose is touching the water. We need to systematically go down the hose, and like the first one closest to the water source we need to plug first, and then as we go forward. Otherwise, you can fix all of the leaks at the front of that hose, but the water's never even going to get there because that hose is leaking all the way where it's like plugged into the faucet. Hopefully that example makes sense. So if, like, really simple, if you're feeling super jacked up, it's not a strategy thing, it's a mindset energy thing. If you are not feeling neutral, I talk about neutrality so much, it is your friend. Positivity is great, but really neutrality is like the winner. If you feel jacked up, it's a mindset strategy thing. It's a mindset energy thing. It does not mean down the hose there are not strategy things to look at. It means that is closest to the water source. And if you are leaking all of your energy because your nervous system is jacked up, because you are freaking out, because you're overcompensating, because you're trying to be a good girl, better than everybody else, it kind of doesn't matter what else is going on. We have to address that first. If you feel neutral, it's going to be a strategy or an action thing. And then your job is to spot and solve the right problem. And that sounds overly simple, but I do not think that is what most of us are doing in business. I think if you're a client of mine, you know that is what we spend so much of our sessions around, because our tendency instead is to go to our conditioning. It is not your fault, it is conditioning. And conditioning will tell you not what is the right problem to solve. Conditioning, it will tell you, here is the way to create external validation safety that you have been conditioned works to get this immediate need met, to immediately soothe, as opposed to here is actually the real problem and issue to solve for. Going back to my very dramatic example with my ex, my conditioning will say the way to create safety when things feel crazy here is to work harder, to overcompensate, to try to be so good so that he doesn't go on a bender, or when he does, to take care of everything else so that everything is okay. That's not the right problem to solve. But it feels like it because that is what my conditioning tells me, right? Which is why it is valuable. It is just valuable to have support to, like, I think we get this cognitively. Most of us are not just doing this. Instead of zooming out and being like, what is the actual right problem to solve here? The actual right problem to solve is not Kim overcompensate for an addict. And again, that is such a dramatic example, but I think it is helpful for us to see how we do that in our businesses. And I think just some other things here, just in terms of like why I think businesses results are actually more challenging. Look, all of the things are true we talked about, but I do think there's an opportunity for so many of us to reclaim our visibility and the way we're taking up space. I think a lot of us have, myself included, have just shrunk quite a bit this year, and shrunk in times not because we're not doing well, but shrunk because we don't want to say good things when there are also challenging things going on. I think, or we don't want to be a part of the problem, or we don't want to seem like that person. We don't want to seem braggy. So I do think one of the right problems to solve for a lot of people is to reclaim that visibility and taking up space. And similarly, to have that discernment around where responsibility in your business lives. I think those are things, because again, behind the scenes, if you're overcompensating, over-delivering, not from a place that feels good, but from a place of, I will not be safe and okay if I do this, that is where we lose capacity in our business. Capacity is the biggest thing for you in your business in terms of what allows you to scale. So not only will that lead to burnout, but even if you're not feeling burnt out, that will literally, if I am overcompensating, over-delivering, and over-functioning for 22 one-on-one clients, and overtaking on responsibility, I can't have 22 clients. I can only have 5, right? And so if I can only have 5 clients, not there's anything wrong with having only 5 clients if you only want 5 clients. It's not what I'm trying to say there, but I'm just saying, in terms of literally practically looking at then what is the revenue I can bring into my business, I can't bring more revenue into my business in that way. Like, and so just you can even see it practically there. I have more notes here, but we're already at an hour. So I'll just wrap this up in a bow. I really hope this was valuable for y'all. I hope that this landed. I hope that this made sense. I hope this just helps you to see all of us are going through this stuff in different ways. So this, again, isn't to make anybody wrong. But I do hope this helps you to see that, yes, we need to spot and solve the right problem in your business, but you are not the problem. Because I think that is the place we tend to go to, that, oh, there's a problem in my business, or there's a problem in the industry, and I am the problem. You are not the problem, and you do not solve a problem in the industry, in the world, in your business by becoming the problem, or by taking on more than you can actually solve for. I hope that this is a reminder that shrinking, overcompensating, over responsibility, over functioning, any of the overs, overthinking, overly being good, being super good, being super perfect, and I say that very sarcastically, does not create safety. It does not create results. It just is really great for other people, right? That is an external thing. It is just really a great form of people pleasing, essentially. We don't fix things in the world, in our business, by people pleasing. We fix it by getting to neutral, taking care of ourselves, regulating our nervous system, creating that internal safety, and then having discernment around what is our responsibility, what's not our responsibility. Of course, take personal responsibility, but what we're talking about here is taking over responsibility, as well as having discernment around what is actually the right problem to solve, and then going and solving that, instead of leaning into our conditioning that has us go and solve all of the problems that are external for other people to feel good, as opposed to, I internally feel good and safe, so I'm going to focus on this one problem over here that actually moves things forward for me. Just see, did I have anything else here? I feel like that's probably all of it. All right, I hope you enjoyed my TED Talk. I hope that this landed for you. I hope this was valuable for you. This is what I've been talking about, wanting to talk about. I do get this a little bit more nuanced. So if you have questions, thoughts around this, please feel free to leave them for me in the comments, as always, or you can always shoot me an email or a DM. And as I mentioned, I am fully booked, but if you are looking for support, whether it's around the internal side of this, the mindset side of this, the unwinding some of that conditioning, or on the strategic side of this in terms of looking at what is the right problem to solve in my business, what is the strategy that moves me forward. My strategy isn't working the way it used to because of all of the factors we were talking about, because there's a longer customer journey. What do I need to address there? What are the things I can shift? How do I have a different relationship with my clients and not overcompensate and still help them to get great results? Or what do I need to adjust and tweak in my strategy without overworking, without overdoing things, but also giving my business what it actually needs? I think that's my zone of genius and what I'm the best at supporting clients with, and really being able to understand that nuance and help them to figure that out, and to be able to dance between the mindset and holding people and what they're holding side of things, but also really looking neutrally, practically at the data and at the strategy side of things. And I think that's why my clients get the results that they do. So I am fully booked, but I will drop you a link for a free coaching consultation. I will be opening up some week-long strategy intensives. I think we still have one in November that will open up, but I'll definitely be opening up a couple of those. And then I'm always connecting with people for waitlist spots for my one-on-one for one of those open up. I don't know for sure. We might have one in November, December that opens up. And if you want to come to New York City, I will probably open up another VIP day. Probably not until the new year. We could maybe find a weekend time before then if you're coming into the city and you want a weekend time in December. I think there's literally no capacity during the week. But for the new year, I will definitely open up one of those if you're interested in a VIP in-person day. I love those because I get to spoil you at Soho House, at Dumbo House, and we get to have all the yummy food and get to see the city as a backdrop, but we get to spend 8 hours coaching and digging into what we're talking about here. All the, what's showing up for what you're holding, how do we unwind some of this, but also practically, let's roll up our sleeves and map out your strategy, map out how you're going to scale your revenue, look at the leaks in the hose or in the funnel that we want to close up so we can improve those results or sustain them. So if you're interested in that, I will drop a link for a coaching consultation. That's completely free. And then I'll be back next week with another topic for you. Love y'all. Bye.